Breaking news out of Texas. The Republican governor there pardoning a man convicted of murdering a Black Lives Matter protester back in 2020. As we're just learning in the last couple of minutes here that he is now out of prison, meaning that 25-year sentence for former U.S. Army Sergeant Daniel Perry is now pardoned. Again, this was for shooting and killing Garrett Foster, a 28-year-old man at a protest in Austin. It is nullified. All of Perry's rights are set to be restored. Perry admits to shooting Foster, who you see right here, while driving an Uber in Austin. And his attorneys argue that because Foster was armed, Perry was acting in self-defense. Governor Greg Abbott saying in a statement just last hour, Texas has, in his words, one of the strongest stand-your-ground laws in the country, and that, I'm quoting here, it cannot be nullified by a jury or a progressive district attorney.
So, Mike Smith, thank you so much for joining us. You're, of course, a Navy F-18 pilot, combat vet, and board member of Veterans for Responsible Leadership. What do you make of this decision out of Texas by the governor to pardon this murderer? Convicted by a jury of his peers, 12 men and women looked at the evidence and said, this guy is guilty and needs to be put away. How do you understand Governor Abbott's decision to let him out?
I think it's a pretty gross miscarriage of justice. I think that there's a component here of the first place where I'd start with is the process of how this happened and the fact that it was something that was bandied about on conservative media.
Yeah.
In order to drive this behavior. And it was only then that it was brought up. And that is rankles of the worst kind of power abuse associated with that. That it comes from a place of pure politics. If we are to be a country of laws and to be governed by rule of law, then we need to adhere to the law. And pardons exist for a reason, which is when sometimes the process gets a little sideways and there has been a miscarriage of justice for the governor to provide leniency. This was not that, not by a long shot.
Talk about the details of this case, because it is not as if the convicted veteran in this case, I'm ashamed to say, is a sympathetic figure. I mean, he had planned this. He had talked to friends about how he could pull off a murder like this and get away with it by claiming self-defense. He had a litany of social media posts expressing the most disgusting kind of hatred for Black people, and he intentionally provoked this situation, driving his car into a Black Lives Matter protest to instigate this exchange. What's your understanding of how this unfolded?
I think there's a few things to pull apart here. The first one is the fact that this is language that's very common amongst certain social circles in the United States, and we've become too comfortable with that. And I think we all know people that are like this, especially if you have friends that are, of a particular version of conservatism. And I think we all have a duty to stand up against this. This guy didn't have enough people telling him that what he was saying was sick and wrong early enough in his life for him to maybe to rethink about what he did. That this all could have been saved if somebody had stopped that thinking earlier. The second part about it is that it was an intentional act. It was carried out with malicious intent. And it was to suppress the rights of individuals to protest an actual injustice of the government around the killing of George Floyd.
What is so twisted about this pardon is the fact that the victim, Garrett Foster, except for his politics, should have been a poster child for the conservative approach to gun rights. He was open carrying, which is legal in Texas. He was responsibly doing it. I'm not an advocate of open carry, but let's just paint the picture of what happened here. Garrett Foster was at a protest, open carrying a weapon on his chest, slung, no round in the chamber, even after Perry drove into the crowd. Foster, who ended up getting murdered, told him to stay in his car, never raised his rifle. And this is all acknowledged. There's no dispute. There's no factual dispute here before the court. Perry said, yeah, he didn't raise his gun at me, and he still shot him 5 times. It is just so weird to me that the gun rights movement has elevated Perry as the hero here and not Foster, the one who was responsibly carrying a weapon in that conflict.
There's a certain strain of conservatism that's focused primarily on power. It happens a little bit on the left as well, but it seems to have really taken over within the conservative movement around the idea that the law protects some and binds others, while it binds some and then protects others. And so it's an in-group, out-group mindset. And this is a pure power play. This is when it comes to conservative media advocating for this, when it comes to Governor Abbott advocating for this. The idea is that the idea of stand your ground laws protecting for Second Amendment rights only applies to some people, and it's only those people that count, and the rest of us can get shoved. Doesn't matter whether we're veterans. Doesn't matter whether we're exercising our rights. It only matters about power, and that is a dangerous path for this country to go down because it is corrosive to the rule of law.
It is. I think you're right. And that to me is the most frightening aspect of this. I mean, it is indeed a miscarriage of justice that this murderer convicted by 12 of his peers is now walking free. But the signal this sends about political violence and about the excuses we will make for it, as long as it is waged against the outgroup, that to me is the most terrifying aspect of this entire incident.
It just ties into the idea of if you really distrust the government, if you really are scared, if you really do believe in limited government, this is not it. This is a long way from it. This is leading towards anarchy. This is not about having a cohesive society or about extending the American experiment.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I have been so humbled by the support of this audience and the speed at which this show has grown. You are why I and the whole team here do this. If you're interested in bonus content, check out my Patreon page. It's free to sign up, and there's an option to donate as well. The link is right there and in the show notes. Thanks again. I have to believe that Governor Abbott knew who he was speaking to when he issued this pardon, and that the base voter in Texas, the key part of that audience, is roaring their approval right now. I haven't had time to tap into those channels yet, but I bet among the most, well, I won't even say among the most extreme elements, because it's now becoming mainstreamed within MAGA, there is a chorus of approval, not because Abbott righted some legal wrong, but because he let free someone who had killed someone they hate.
When I try to look at the political lens of this, I try to think about why would Governor Abbott do this? And it's either he is playing to a specific type of person that he's afraid of from an electoral standpoint, or he did this because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And when I look at where he is within Texas politics, admittedly, I'm not an expert, I don't see a whole lot of pressure for him to be pushed out. And so if he did this because he's bowing to pressure, it's the pressure at the weakest, which makes him a coward of the highest order. Alternatively, he believes it's the wrong thing or the right thing to do. And if that does so, then he's just morally bankrupt. There's really just not a very defensible position for him as an individual on this issue. And it's worth, condemnation roundly from anybody that looks at it.
I think it is both cowardly and morally bankrupt. Where do you think this leads?
I have hope, actually, to a certain extent. I feel that this country it's almost like it's trying to pass a gallstone. And that it's painful right now, but that the worst and craziest elements are doing the worst and craziest things, but that the large majority of the country has moved beyond this. Texas only voted for Trump by 5% in the last election. It's not, I'm not that old, and I'm old enough to remember when Texas was run by Democrats and it was a much more moderate place. And my hope here is that with Abbott, playing to just absolutely the worst parts of the Republican base, is that, sensible Republicans and sensible Democrats will get together and just be like, we're done. It's time to move on. it's time to make Texas the great state that it should be, rather than the great state or rather than the state that Abbott claims it to be.
Mike, I'm going to put the VFRL promo at the end of this episode so people know where to go. But can you do your 20-second pitch on the organization? If I sit up, folks can see the VFRL logo on my T-shirt. What has VFRL got planned without giving away too much between now and the election?
Yeah, absolutely. So proud to be a board member of Veterans for Responsible Leadership, member of the organization since 2018. We've done a lot of important stuff in the electoral space, advocating for the rule of law, democracy, and the continuation of American democracy. If you're a veteran, a military family member, or just broadly a supporter of our mission, go to VFRL.org in order to join up with us and to join our newsletter. We're going to be participating in both the air and the ground this season. There will be news coming out shortly about a participation in a couple of on-the-ground events. As well as we're going to be on the air with ads in addition to speaking engagements. So love to have anybody in the community join us, VFRL.org.
Awesome. We'll put a link in the show notes. As usual, thanks, Mike, for joining us.
Good to see you, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Between now and the election, I'm going to highlight a handful of critical pro-democracy efforts that I want you to know about. The first of these is Veterans for Responsible Leadership, or VFRL. It's an organization on the front lines of the battle to protect our democratic safeguards and to hold accountable those who would dismantle them. VFRL's number one priority between now and November is preventing Donald Trump from being reelected. As an organization led by veterans, VFRL is bringing to bear all that experience and credibility to persuade other veterans and military family members that a vote for Donald Trump is a vote that undermines the very Constitution that those in the military swore to uphold. Here's where VFRL needs your help. If you are a veteran or a family member of one, and if you're looking for ways to make meaningful contributions between now and November, go to VFRL.org. The team there is working on a number of critical initiatives that will make a difference in the coming presidential election. But they need more veteran voices and more volunteers. If you're up for it, go to VFRL.org and sign up. I'll have more updates in the coming months on what they have planned, but trust me, it'll be worth your time. Thanks.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.